Okay, well, I guess we can go ahead and get started 10 seconds early if someone comes in the door. That's fine. I'm Keith Landa. I'm from Purchase College. Come on in. I started 10 seconds early, so you're fine.
Now
Now I'm on time. Okay, official start. And I'm happy to have been invited down for the conference. Nog came across a topic I've been presenting at the CIT conference that you mentioned earlier today. This is something I've talked about at a number of other SUNY conferences, the SUNY Technology Conference and the SUNY Wizard Conference. At those conferences, I had more of my administrator hat on today. Today I want to, as I said, focus more on BYOD, bring your own device, and mobile instruction. They're a hot topic, and it's something that I've started to become involved with in my own teaching for the last couple of years in a very kind of roundabout way. So I just want to talk about some of the opportunities, show you some low threshold ways that you can actually begin to take advantage and leverage the capabilities of some of these mobile devices if you have them. And we'll go from there. I tend to be fairly informal presenter even when I'm doing more presentations. So please, if you have questions, bring them up as we go along. Okay, so basically I want to spend a little bit of time talking about why I started lecturing from my iPad, how I got to the place where I'm at, what I think are some of the advantages from these devices as opposed to teaching from the regular kind of instructor station you might have in your technology classrooms. I will provide a little bit of a review of some applications. I happen to be working with an iPad, but you could do the same kind of thing with a Galaxy tablet or an Android device or a Windows Surface or whatever. It's really the form factor and the functionality that comes along with the mobile devices that I think really provide us some opportunities. Make a few comments about lecture capture. I'll talk about some of the cloud services that help make these functions go, and then finish off with some discussion about broader mobile learning initiatives that I think at Purchase we might be getting into in the future. Before I go on too far though, how many of you are classroom teachers at some point in your day? Okay, good. Clinical teachers? I have no experience using iPads as a clinical teaching device, but maybe you can think of applications as we go through this. Okay, so a little bit about where I'm coming from. As I said, I'm from Purchase College. It's one of the comprehensive colleges. So we're about 4,200 students. It's known for its arts programming. We've got professional conservatory programs in theater, dance, music, art and design, film, and so forth. But my background is actually in STEM. I'm a biologist by training before I became a college administrator. And even though we're known for the arts, we have a fairly strong science program as well. I wear a lot of hats at the college. I am director of the Teaching, Learning, and Technology Center at Purchase. And so I help faculty with a lot of teaching and learning issues. We do course design support, instructional design. We are also involved in helping the college to set directions for instructional technology. I'm also involved in college governance, which we won't talk about today. But I do spend a fair amount of my time still in the classroom, even though I have, I actually do have a faculty appointment now. I'm Even though I'm a biologist by training, I just got tenure as associate librarian because the teaching and learning center that I run happens to be housed in the library. So when they made me a faculty member, they had to make me an associate librarian, even though I have zero library experience. I teach in our freshman Science in the Modern World program, which is our science for non-science majors. I teach a course on Mars exploration, a section on Mars exploration for that. And I teach an online Search for Life in the Universe course. So I want to talk a little bit about how I kind of stumbled in to this topic, just to show you that you don't have to be intentional or Machiavellian or whatever to have this plan to infiltrate your campuses with tablets. I tend to use a lot of different teaching approaches in the classroom. I try to do active learning, T-based learning, all that stuff, group work and so forth. But there are times when I have to take 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever, and we're going to lecture about X. So for the longest time, I was making use of the smartboard tools that we have in our smart classrooms, which are kind of enhanced presentation classrooms. I would bring up my slides, which I would do like in Google Docs presentations. I'd bring them up onto the instructor station. I'd use the pen tools to draw on the slides as I was talking about things as we were going on. And this had the big advantage of, at the end of the lecture, I could take those scribbled on slides, save them as a PDF, and put them up in Moodle, which is our learning management system. And the students would have available not only my slides, but also the notes we took on the slides. I thought, man, I'm being a very great instructor here because I'm giving them this. Well, a year ago spring, I went into the classroom where I was going to teach my Mars class, and it was not set up with smartboard tools and the touch-sensitive screen and so forth. So I'm thinking, I can't do what I've been doing for the last 4 years to provide lecture notes, like a capture of the lecture conversation to my students. So rather than putting in a work order to get Campus Tech Services to get the classroom set up with a touch-sensitive pad and install the smartboard tools, and who knows how long that would take, right? I figure, well, I've got one of these things in my hand. There ought to be some way that I could just do it on my own, okay? If I can't make this into a smart board, whiteboard, then what's the advantage of having this? So that's when I really started to think about, well, should I just start thinking about teaching from my tablet? And how would I do it? What would be the advantages? Now that all sounds very well thought out, strategic, right? You would imagine that I would then go out and do a review of all of the smartboard apps that are available on the iPad, and I would look at their features and make a rational. No, instead, I've got a lecture. I've class coming up in a day or two. Let me find a smartboard app that I can use to teach from my tablet. And I found one. I'll show you some others, but I found one that I liked, and so that's the whole genesis of this story. I kind of fell into this whole topic. So I will talk about the app I use in a minute, but I did want to let you know that there are a variety of smartboard apps, whiteboard apps that you can consider. How many of you have a tablet either through school or at home? iPads? Android devices? Okay. Whatever, Windows Surface tablets or combos, you'll be able to find a whiteboard app that you will like. Okay. Many are free. The one that I stumbled on right off the bat happened to not be free. I bought it when it was on discount for $1.99. I think you can get it for $2.99 now, so you have to keep in mind all of the expenses here. But if you go and do a search for whiteboard apps, I mean, many of these will come up in list after list after list. So I just want to go through some of them. Let's see what I do there. Educreations is oftentimes at the top of the list or high up on the list. This is a free whiteboard app. I know it's available for the iPad. I'm pretty sure it's available for Android devices as well. You can see the basic tools that you would expect in a whiteboard app. You can have pens that you can draw with in different colors. You can import images. You can put up a little keyboard so that you can type on the screen. You can erase things. You can undo and redo and so forth. And you can grab things to move them around. Educreation's very popular in the K through 12 space. Educreation is not only the whiteboard app that you have on your iPad or your Android tablet, but it's also an online community. You sign up for an account at Educreations. You specify the grade levels, the subject areas you're teaching, and when you are doing your presentations in Educreations, you can not only save them to your tablet, but you can export them, meaning you can upload them to the Educreation site. You can tag them as private or public. You can say, this is, now the subject areas, like I say, very focused on K through 12. So is it social science? Is it natural science? Is it whatever? And you can, like they say here, sign up for free and use this as an app. So that's one that's very popular. A little bit more. A little more quickly. Show Me is, I think it's a very nice whiteboard app because it is very strict down and very simple. It is basically a whiteboard. And again, you'd have the tools that you expect to have here. Not a lot of bells and whistles. And so Show Me is oftentimes on the list. Screen Chomp. I think Screen Chomp is especially popular in the younger grade levels, but I put it up here on the list because you'll see it oftentimes. It's a whiteboard app. You could use it if you want to. It has the same kinds of tools. It has a lot more stamps tools that you might expect in a whiteboard app for younger kids. ThinkSpace is kind of interesting. You can start up ThinkSpace on your iPad, and your colleague can start up ThinkSpace on her Android device, and you can access the same shared whiteboard space, and you can do collaboration in real time. So that has an interesting feature. Doceri is also gets a lot of press. Doceri, I think I think it has a freemium model. I think you can get a free version of it, but you can also spend, I think, like $4.95 for the app. So it's a little bit more expensive. One feature that Doceri has is that you can also install a Doceri app for your Windows or Mac laptop. Or the instructor station in the room here could be running the Doceri app on the desktop, and I could be running Doceri on my tablet, and what's on my tablet would be mirrored to the instructor station in the podium, which is hooked to the projector. So that's one way to deal with the wireless. As long as your campus's wireless allows the mirroring between your laptop app and the instructor station app.
Do any of these allow you to download because obviously to create a presentation on this is impossible.
Yeah.
To download your PowerPoint presentation?
Many of them do, and the one that I happen to focus on first does it, and I will show you the workflow that I do. I pretty much do most of my creation of the presentations still in Google Docs, save it as a PDF, and then bring those PDFs into my Explain Everything presentations. There are some of the whiteboard apps that don't support that, so that's something certainly you'd want to look at. Maybe one more before I get to, well, they're all the same. No, they're not all the same, but they're close enough that I run out of things to say about them after a while. And here's the one that I happened to stumble on when I started this process, and the one that I've continued with, Explain Everything from Morris Cook. Like I say, this is not a free app. It costs a minimal amount now, but and you can get it for all of your tablet devices. I think I have it on my phone as well, although it's clearly not as functional on the phone as it is on a tablet. So, Explain Everything or many of the other whiteboard apps allow me to basically do this when I am presenting in class. So here's just one slide of a presentation I was doing on planetary thermostats and how the carbonate silicate cycle allows terrestrial geology to kind of stabilize climate. There's a lot of important concepts here. There are positive and negative feedback mechanisms. There's a very important negative feedback mechanism in that if the temperature goes up, which is what I'm talking about here, as the temperature goes up, that increases the weathering of silicate rocks, which tends to draw carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, which tends to bring the temperature back down. Okay? So I could have a PowerPoint slide on a regular kind of instructor station where I would bring that up and I would wave my hand, and talk about it. But to be able to annotate as I'm going through here, my handwriting's not the best, as you can see, but students can pretty much kind of see what's going on. We've talked about negative feedback. We've got all of this down here, and so my presentations, when I do presentations, tend to look more like this now compared to what I used to do decades ago with PowerPoint, which was bullet point after bullet point after bullet point of content that I was going to try to get across to them. So the question was, do you have to build these? I would hate to have to build my presentations primarily in any of these whiteboard apps. You could open up a blank whiteboard space. They all allow you to do multiple pages of that whiteboard. You could open up the text tool and you could type in, boy, that would be annoying, and you can download images and bring those images in. You could construct your presentations in the whiteboard app. I seriously would recommend against it. As I say, what I do, and I'll show this in a little bit more detail, is I still do my presentations in Google Docs, save them as PDFs, bring the PDF in. Explain Everything, and many of the other whiteboard apps will then take that PDF or PowerPoint file or keynote presentation and disarticulate the file into multiple pages in your whiteboard file, and so then you're all set to go to lecture from your tablet with all of these tools. The pencil tool for annotation, I can put on text, I can use a laser pointer, all of these other tools. So this is just a little bit behind the screens with Explain Everything. Again, you can see that it handles PDFs, PowerPoints, keynotes. I've got it set up so that I want those converted into individual pages when I bring them in. I could connect a whole variety of other tools as well. But there are times when I actually don't just take my in the Whiteboard app itself. So I won't bother going out to this YouTube of one of the, we were doing a simulation lab in the Mars course about the Mars Global Surveyor laser altimeter. And rather than just talk about it, some of the functionality in the Whiteboard app allowed me to make that a little bit more real for the students. So I thought I would just give you an example of that. See this little image of the Mars Global Surveyor? Because I brought it in as a separate image that I downloaded, it's now something that I can move around. I can actually, it's actually probably about this big to begin with, and so I shrunk it down, and it's flying up here over Mars. Well, I need some Mars, so Mars is a red planet, so let me draw, here's a mountain, and here's some Mars. Okay, and so the way the laser altimeter works is that Mars Global Surveyor is going along in its orbit, and then periodically, multiple times a second, shoots a laser pulse down at the planet, and then the time it takes the laser pulse to come back up tells the distance between the spacecraft and the surface of the planet. Since we know how high the spacecraft is orbiting, we can figure out how high that bit of Mars is. Well, instead of just telling the students about that, I can actually turn on the laser pointer tool and go bing, bing, and then the spacecraft goes along, and then it shoots another laser pulse, and then so forth. And as you might imagine, students really appreciate me making a fool of myself at the front of the class. And so, it gives me a much more dynamic presentation of this concept than just if I had a PowerPoint slide up here that I'd brought into my tablet that I was kind of drawing on. If you do a lecture from a tablet, how many of you deal with anatomy? Okay. This is not anatomy, this is Mars geography, but since you have a very natural way using the pinch and expand motions that you're probably familiar with from your smartphone, it makes it very easy to take images that you wanted to be talking about and arrange them and blow them up however you want. So here we're talking about, here is Olympus Mons. You could be talking about the loop of Henle and the kidney instead. Whatever you want to do, you can blow it up, talk about it, and then you notice that as I shrink that back down, the annotation is actually on that image and goes along with it. Same thing I could do over here. So, there are some times when it's nice to have dynamic objects on your whiteboard presentation, and you can figure out, well, what is it that I just want to bring in my PowerPoint slides into my whiteboard and talk about them and draw on them, and when is it that I want to actually have objects in there. I won't, well, maybe I'll try playing it. Some of the whiteboard apps like Explain Everything. Some of the other ones allow you to embed video objects into your presentations. And I don't know that we're going to get sound because of the way I'm bridging things here. But if you do use video, you can bring it in, and for example, Mars is here. Kind of nice to be able to draw on the video, right? And then I can erase it. and then go back to playing the video. Okay. So there's some nice advantages. I found these kinds of little functions that are available through these whiteboard apps are much more responsive than showing presentation from the instructor station. You can put animations in the PowerPoint, but they're kind of lame compared to what you can do with a real whiteboard like this. Okay, so like I say, for the times when I only teach a class or two per year, since I'm mostly an administrator, but in the time that I have been teaching with my tablet, I found it has changed the way I approach presentations when I'm doing presentations. As you can tell, my slides tend to be more graphical and less wordy because I have the option of drawing very easily and naturally the words that I want on my slides. So I focus much more on graphical content that can get across to the students. Now, I'm trying to be a little ironic by making that point on a slide where I deliberately put bullet points, but it's changed my presentation style quite a bit. I have the ability to make use of much more dynamic materials. Working with a tablet and a stylus is a very natural way to annotate your presentations when you're talking about them. I've got the variety of tools we've looked at. I think when I am presenting from my tablet and walking around the room, there's less of a barrier between me and my students. And my students are more willing to engage than if I am sitting back here behind the podium where we've got this natural barrier between us. Okay. So there are some mobility issues that I did deal with when I started out this process. Like I say, I kind of was ahead of the curve compared to where our campus technology folks were when I started doing this. And initially there was not a way on campus that they were providing for me to actually present wirelessly from my tablet. So, I had to pick up this was actually from the Apple store, so it was incredibly expensive. But, you can get these from Chinese distributors for about $8.95. But when I was using the tablet to VGA connector, of course, I had to be tethered to the instructor station or wherever Campus Tech Services folks presented me a VGA connection. So I found that to be less than ideal. Okay. Still a lot better than what I was doing. But now I have more this kind of experience at Purchase. At this point, I'm the only one who has this kind of experience at Purchase because we're still looking at what the options are. I thought initially I would just pick up an Apple TV unit for our Teaching and Learning Technology Center, and then I'd hook it up to the HDMI connector that's in the classroom. And Apple TV networking works so great at home. Now I should be able to just do that. Apple TV networking, as well as this Air server software, relies on Apple's AirPlay service, which is a Bonjour networking, if any of you are administrator or tech folks in the room. And a lot of enterprise networking folks don't necessarily like to turn that on their systems, but after buying me a $1,200 appliance to go into the instructor station that actually didn't do what the manufacturer said it was going to do and had to be sent back, the network services folks said, okay, we'll turn on Bonjour networking and we'll this Air server software is a Apple TV is a hardware solution. This is a software solution that would go on the instructor station, Mac or Windows in the classroom, and allow any device that supports AirPlay networking to be mirrored to the instructor station, which is then through the projector up to the screen.
Just because the Apple TV can get on the network and your tablet can get on the network, there's still an additional step where you have to turn on your network? Or if you can get your Apple TV on and your tablet on, it automatically...
If they're on the same network and the network supports Bonjour networking, you can go to the little control panel that's at the bottom of your iOS device. Like if you swoop up from the bottom, you'll see the alarm clock, the flashlight, and so forth. One of the options should be AirPlay, if there are any AirPlay devices. You just click on that and you select your Apple TV, or in my case, in the classroom, I select the instructor station that is running the Air Server software, and then my device here is mirrored onto the instructor station. This is like... rather than $1,200 per smart classroom for the appliance that didn't work, this is like $29 a license. And so this is a much more scalable solution. So if I put my administrator hat on for a minute, as long as our network guys have bitten the bullet and turned on Bonjour networking, we could essentially spend $29 in every classroom, put Air Server on the primarily Windows machines in our tech classrooms, and any iOS device could be mirrored to the instructor station in those classrooms. We haven't done that campus-wide yet because one of the things we'll have our tech instructional technology advisory group this fall look at a variety of different options. I mean, you can do the same thing for Android devices with their Chromecast player. Air Server is supposed to be able to support Windows laptops and I think Android devices. There are various virtual private networking applications that we could use, screen sharing applications like Screen Connect, which would allow you to open up a browser on the instructor station and a browser on your laptop or tablet or whatever, and have the contents of that device, like my laptop or tablet, displayed in a window, a browser window on the instructor station. So there are a lot of options, including room control appliances, which we did not have really good luck with, that we want to go through before we figure out what we want to do more campus-wide. Great. Now, there's one other thing that came along with this ability to kind of lecture naturally from my tablet. Almost every one of these whiteboard applications has a little record button, which is what I'm doing right now. So later on this evening, this presentation, including your comments, which have probably been picked up by my tablet, at least at a low level, will be up in my YouTube channel as a YouTube video that I could then embed into my Moodle course or do whatever with. You can see here that there are 2 recording tracks and explain everything. Other whiteboard applications will handle this differently, but explain everything will record the audio as the audio track, and it will record all of the pen tool operations in a separate track. So it's recording not only my discussing these slides, but when I'm shooting the laser pointer back and forth and drawing on the slides with the pencil and erasing things, that's all recorded, and it all gets exported into the YouTube video. So what I have now is the ability not just to give my students the PowerPoint slides with some scribbles on them, which as a PDF, which is what I did in the past, but I can now, from my tablet, control doing a lecture capture. And then, giving them a much richer recording of the conversation and the discussion we had in class around these presentations.
Do you usually wear a microphone?
No.
Or-
Never wear a microphone for the tablet apps. First of all, it's never that far away from, it was a problem when I had to be tethered in the past, because I'd have it on the instructor station with the VGA, and I couldn't help myself. I'd go over here, and the recording on the tablets is still pretty good. I could be 15, 20 feet away, and it would still capture what I said, but not the best. But now that I'm untethered, I can just it's always close enough that, for better or for worse, my voice always comes through loud and clear on the recordings.
What is the size of the classes that
I have about 40 students for my Mars course. And, if students are asking questions from the first half of the room, you can pretty much make out the questions that are being asked. And that's, no fancy miking in the room. That's just native microphone on the tablet device. So I was, when I first encountered that in some of our presentations, I was kind of mildly surprised and pleasantly surprised that, I didn't say, and oh, by the way, John Smith, what, because I haven't had my students sign release waivers or anything, but, it's possible to get more than just me talking. It is possible to get some of the back and forth that I like to encourage in my classes. So for the cost of a tablet that I already had, and $1.99 app, and I used to have a cheap $7.99 stylus. I splurged this summer and bought myself a whatever this one is for about $50, because I'm planning to do a lot. Well, I'll tell you about why I splurged. But in terms, if I want to put my administrator hat back on, in terms of lecture capture system, rather than Purchase College spending $8,000, $12,000, $15,000 a year on some commercial lecture capture system, for less than $100, I'm doing lecture capture for me under my control. So, this lecture capture is, as shown here, it's a natural extension of the lecturing from my tablet. The biggest technical hurdle is I have to remember to click the record button before I start. And I've forgotten to do that in some classes. Like I say, I'm giving my students a more complete experience of our class than what I used to give with their PDFs. I have my YouTube channel. I'm getting much more, I'm publishing a lot more to my YouTube channel now than I ever did in the past, and that's very flexible, it's cheap, it's self-sufficient. This is limited to real-time playback, though, which can be a drag. And if I'm recording a 45-minute lecture session in class, which some of them go into because, as you can tell, I'm wordy, students are not going to be anxious to go and relive that 45 minutes by watching the YouTube video unless there's a real compelling reason for them to do so. Okay? Captioning can be an issue, but YouTube is getting much, much better in terms of auto-captioning uploaded content. I've been pleasantly surprised at the captioning that has showed up on my uploaded videos. There are no analytics beyond just basic stuff that I get off of my YouTube channel. A lot of the commercial systems would have a specific tie-in to the LMS so that there's the kind of a one-button click and record in the classroom, and the video would go to an on-campus server that would be dropped into Moodle or Blackboard or whatever the LMS is. This is a little bit more complicated, but it's not rocket science. Many of the commercial systems also would allow students to browse the recorded lectures by slide. So they would know that, oh, I had some issues with what we were talking about on slide 6, so I'll go straight there and go right to that point in the recording. You got to kind of manually scrub through the YouTube video, so it's not horrible, but it's not quite as functional in some respects as these commercial systems. But I think the cost-benefit ratio is pretty good for my lecture capture. Just quickly, you can from Explain Everything, you can export as MP4s or QuickTime movies. You can control the quality that you want to export as, and so forth. I have actually broken down and gotten the Explain Everything Compressor app for my MacBook so that I actually don't have to do the file conversion and upload from my tablet. I can take the Explain Everything project files, which are small because they're just audio recordings, and a series of pen commands along with the slides and the images and so forth. So they tend to be small. They're easily moved to my MacBook, and then I can take 4, 5, 6 of them, dump them onto the Explain Everything compressor, and the compressor will chug through them, converting them sometimes over several hours to the MP4 files, which are then automatically uploaded to my YouTube account, rather than trying to push all of that through my tablet. I'm not, I can't think of any of the other whiteboard apps that have, well, maybe Doceri, since it also has an app for your laptop or desktop computer, it might also allow you to do the same kind of thing. So here's my YouTube channel, or overview shot of it. There are now lots of Mars lectures up on my YouTube channel. So a little bit about my workflow. This is more complicated than you need to do. I still like to use Google Drive presentations for my starting point. That's not one of the file formats that I can take directly into Explain Everything. So what I do is I export them as PDFs to my Dropbox account. I could save them as PDFs on my Google Drive and then bring them in, but I've got all of these cloud-based services, and for some of them I could never realize, well, why did I sign up for a Box account? Because I'm not using it for anything. I like the separation that I can get here. So, I'm creating my presentations here. As soon as I feel like I'm ready, I export them as PDFs to a folder for that particular class on my Dropbox account. That indicates to me that, okay, we're ready to go now to import it into Explain Everything. Then in the class, I can annotate the presentations and record, and then I have Explain Everything app on my tablet and the compressor on my laptop connected to my YouTube account. The files automatically go up onto YouTube. I personally just make them all public because I'm a big advocate of open education. You could put them up as unlisted if you didn't want people having access to your presentations in kind of a stumbling across the internet kind of way. but I just make them all public. Whether they're public or unlisted, you can bring them into your LMS and let your students have access to them. The one thing I do use Box for is that in addition to exporting my project files, I actually archive the Explain Everything files themselves, the smaller files with the slides and the audio recordings and the pen strokes, and I stick them on my Box account, in case for some reason I wanted to go back and add some more annotation to that presentation and re-export it to YouTube. I don't know, but I finally have a reason for my Box account. So you can connect to Explain Everything to Dropbox, Evernote, Box, Google Drive, YouTube, Vimeo. I do not push things out to Facebook from my Explain Everything. I still kind of use Facebook primarily for personal. My Twitter account is my professional presence, so I can, from my Explain Everything app, push out a link to my Twitter followers, all 450 of them. We have no WebDAV services set up on campus, but if you did through your campus networking, you could easily dump these files onto your network drive on campus. So a couple of next steps. I'm planning to concentrate a lot more on flipped classroom approach for my Mars class in particular, my in-person class. I want to convince my non-science majors, freshmen, that science is a verb, not a noun, and so I'm hoping to spend almost all of our class sessions next spring on actual application exercises. I've got some curriculum from Arizona State that I'm incorporating that's NASA related, a whole variety of things. But I still need to then, have a way to get my content presentation to the students. So I'm planning to use Explain Everything out of the classroom to create those online videos that I'll have the students responsible for in a variety of mechanisms in advance of class, so that they can come in and we can actually do science rather than talk about science when they're in class. The last thing I want to do is use those 45-minute long lecture captures from last spring in this regards, because I would have students dozing. They'd be killing themselves by the end of the semester. So what I need to do between now and next spring is to take my content presentation, and how many of you are familiar with Khan Academy? TED Talks? Yeah. Khan Academy is more the model I'm going to be going for, because no one wants to see my talking head like in a TED Talk. But you can use these whiteboard apps to do those same Khan Academy kind of 5 to 8 to 4 to minute long mini lectures, mini presentations that are very focused on specific aspects of a topic. And I will be cranking those out between now and next spring so that I can assign them along with other open educational resources for my students to prep for our in-class sessions where we will actually be doing hands-on science. So wish me luck to get that done between now and the end of the summer, because once semester starts, things are going to get busy again. I have set up an account at TED Ed. How many of you have heard of TED Ed? Okay, you might want to check this site out. It allows you to basically use any web video and create an online lesson around it. You can, pull out clips from online videos, assign them for your students to watch. You can embed questions during the video. You can do discussion forums around that. Now, many of those tools I also have in Moodle, and you would have in Blackboard or whatever your learning management system is. But I may end up using TED Ed to kind of take some of this online learning more public. And then one thing that we'll be looking at on campus at Purchase for the coming year is mobile learning more broadly. And again, I'll put my administrator hat back on. Most of my students have tablets or smartphones, and I'm not one to prohibit them from the classroom. I think I know when to tell students to put them away, but I haven't taken the next step of what can we actually do if actually turn the students on with their mobile devices in the classroom, in terms of collaborative learning, in classroom research that is very specific to the topics and the discussions we're having right then and there. So we'll probably have a group looking at, this mirroring from my iPad works fairly nicely with me. But, is it the best system for me to be able to have Susan and Frank and Jeff, be able to put their content up on the main screen so that we can talk about, what have you guys been doing? Who's taking notes? What simulations or animations are you doing that we can bring up? So we'll be looking at some of those topics as well. And I think this issue of mobile learning is just going to continue to grow. Questions? Thanks.
Mirroring, what do you do?
The mirroring that I'm doing here, I'm running.
I'm more interested in being able to, what I'm looking at there being on their
Everyone's. Okay. Yeah. What are the tools for doing that? That's one of the things we'll be looking at. We have one faculty member who wanted us to get set up with Screen Connect, which is you've got a server over here, and you start a session there, and then multiple devices can connect to that server through a web browser, and then whoever's presenting content to that session on the server can be viewed by everyone on their tablets. We're going to look at that. There are various VPN solutions. At this point, I don't have, this is what we're going to be using for that. We are primarily looking at currently, making it easy for instructors to display from their tablets, and making it easy for students to present from their tablets into the main display. But there are those that, I'm the leader here and everyone else's device tags along with what I'm doing on mine.
You can do that now through Adobe Connect on campus.
Adobe Connect or our Blackboard Collaborate or, any of those web conferencing applications would work. Adobe
We've seen, this is what
Yeah.
I've seen. Our students can log in through a certain web browser.
Yeah, right. The problem you might have if you've got a bunch of students signing into the same Adobe Connect session in the room is if there's any audio involved with it, and they're all playing the audio off of their computers, it's going to be pandemonium. But if it's not really an audio Adobe Connect session, we use Adobe Connect for certain purposes on campus as well. Yeah, it would work fine in terms of me taking my presentation in a presenter mode in Adobe Connect and having the students be able to see it on their laptops.
And what about multiple presenters? Like,
The
you do 10
room,
minutes and then someone else does
the
10
room
minutes.
control device that would cost $1,200 that was supposed to solve all of our problems was able to put, theoretically, 4 devices up on one screen in a kind of split screen kind of format.
No, but what happens if you were done and you were handing off to me now? How hard would it be for me to?
It would be me stopping AirPlay on mine, and since I have no security on my Apple TV, you starting up AirPlay on your iOS device and selecting Keith Landa's TV or something like that.
And you're using the Apple TV in presenter mode right now?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah.
Okay.
So let me go ahead and stop this.